The moment the black limousine stopped outside the grand wedding hall, everyone turned to look. The music seemed to fade beneath the whispering crowd, and even the bride stopped smiling. Nobody expected the woman who stepped out of that limousine to be there. She wore a simple but elegant cream-colored dress, her face calm despite the hundreds of eyes watching her. But what shocked everyone most was who followed her. 3 beautifully dressed children, walking beside her with matching little smiles. At the entrance stood her former husband, Nathaniel Brooks, dressed in an expensive black tuxedo, and for the first time that day, the confidence disappeared from his face. He had invited his former wife, Clara Brooks, to his wedding for one cruel reason: to embarrass her in front of everyone. He wanted the guests to see the woman he had left behind and laugh at how far she had fallen. Instead, Clara arrived looking like someone who had already won a battle nobody else knew she had been fighting. If you believe kindness matters, that people deserve second chances, and that we should never judge someone by their clothes, their money, or their past, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that message, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the person we look down on today is the very person who will inspire us tomorrow. 3 years earlier, Clara's life had looked completely different. She had married Nathaniel when they were both young and hopeful. Nathaniel dreamed of building a successful business, while Clara dreamed of creating a peaceful home. For a while, they were happy. But when Nathaniel's company began growing, his priorities changed. Expensive cars, private parties, wealthy friends, and endless business meetings slowly became more important than the woman who had stood beside him when he had almost nothing. Clara tried to keep their marriage together, but Nathaniel became distant and impatient. Then came the night that changed everything. Clara discovered she was expecting triplets. Instead of celebrating, Nathaniel panicked. He told her that 3 children would destroy his plans and make his life complicated. Clara begged him to stay, promising that they could face everything together, but Nathaniel had already made his decision. He left, convinced that Clara and the babies would become nothing more than a painful memory. The months that followed were incredibly difficult. Clara gave birth to 3 healthy babies, whom she named Caleb, Grace, and Hannah. She had very little money and no luxurious home to return to. She rented a tiny apartment in Ohio, where the kitchen was barely large enough for one person to stand comfortably. Her days became a cycle of feeding babies, washing clothes, working whenever she could, and trying to sleep whenever the children finally rested. There were nights when Clara sat at the kitchen table counting the few dollars left in her wallet. She worried about rent, diapers, food, and medical bills. Yet whenever she looked into the 3 little faces sleeping nearby, she reminded herself that they were not burdens. They were her reason to keep going. Nathaniel rarely asked about them. As his business grew, he moved farther away from the life he had abandoned. Eventually, he became engaged to Victoria Harper, a wealthy socialite whose family owned several hotels. Their wedding was planned as one of the biggest events in the city. Hundreds of guests were invited, including business leaders, celebrities, and wealthy families. Then Nathaniel made a decision that revealed exactly what kind of man he had become. He sent Clara an invitation. At first, she thought perhaps he wanted to make peace. Maybe he finally wanted to meet his children. Maybe something inside him had changed. But the invitation came with a handwritten note that made her heart sink. Nathaniel had written that he thought it would be interesting for everyone to see how she was doing. Clara understood immediately. He wasn't inviting her because he cared. He was inviting her because he wanted to humiliate her. She almost threw the invitation away. But then she looked at Caleb, Grace, and Hannah playing on the floor, and something inside her became stronger. She decided she would attend, not to impress Nathaniel, not to compete with Victoria, and not to prove that she was richer than him. She would attend because she had nothing left to be ashamed of. What Nathaniel didn't know was that Clara's difficult years had slowly changed her life. During the day, she worked at a small bakery. At night, she studied business management online while the children slept. She had discovered that the bakery owner was struggling with online sales, so Clara offered to help. Her ideas increased the bakery's customers, and soon other small businesses began asking for her help. Clara eventually started a small digital marketing company from her apartment. It began with 1 client, then 3, then 10. She worked tirelessly, saved every dollar she could, and refused to waste money trying to impress people. Within 3 years, her company had become surprisingly successful. She still dressed simply. She still lived modestly. She still took her children to ordinary parks and cooked dinner at home. But now, Clara was financially independent. She had also become a partner in a transportation company after helping its owner reorganize his business. That was where the limousine came from. On the morning of Nathaniel's wedding, Clara stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself for a long moment. She wasn't wearing diamonds or designer jewelry. Her dress was elegant but understated. Caleb, Grace, and Hannah stood beside her in matching outfits. She smiled at them and told them that they were going somewhere important. When the limousine arrived, the children climbed inside excitedly. Clara followed them, carrying no anger with her. At the wedding venue, Nathaniel was greeting guests when someone suddenly whispered that Clara had arrived. He turned. The sight stunned him. He had expected a nervous woman in an old dress, perhaps arriving on a crowded bus. Instead, he saw a confident Clara stepping from a limousine with their 3 children beside her. The whispers spread through the crowd. Victoria looked confused. Nathaniel's mother, Margaret, covered her mouth in surprise. Several guests began asking who the children were. Then Caleb walked toward Nathaniel. For a few seconds, Nathaniel couldn't move. He was staring at his own children. They had his eyes, but Clara's gentle expression. Nathaniel suddenly realized that these weren't babies anymore. They were 3 little people who had grown up without him. He tried to smile, but Clara simply nodded politely. The wedding ceremony continued, but Nathaniel couldn't concentrate. His eyes kept drifting toward the children. The celebration he had planned to use as a public victory suddenly felt strangely empty. After the ceremony, Nathaniel finally approached Clara. He expected her to be angry. Instead, she remained calm. He asked about the children, and Clara answered honestly. She told him they were healthy, happy, and doing well in school. Then Nathaniel noticed a group of business owners approaching Clara. They greeted her warmly and thanked her for helping their companies. One of the guests asked Clara about her growing firm. Nathaniel listened in disbelief. The woman he had once considered unsuccessful had built something extraordinary. But Clara never bragged about it. She never insulted him. She never reminded him how much she had suffered. That was what hurt him most. Later that evening, Victoria approached Clara privately. She admitted that she had never known the truth about Nathaniel's first marriage. She had been told that Clara had simply been unable to handle his ambitions. Clara didn't attack Nathaniel. She simply told Victoria that every story has more than one side and that people should be careful before judging someone they haven't truly met. Victoria looked toward Nathaniel, and for the first time, she seemed uncertain about the future. Then came the moment nobody expected. Nathaniel walked onto the small stage during the reception and asked everyone for their attention. He looked nervous. The man who had spent years building an image of confidence suddenly seemed very small. He publicly admitted that he had treated Clara unfairly. He admitted that he had abandoned his responsibilities as a father. And most importantly, he admitted that he had invited Clara to the wedding because he wanted to embarrass her. The room became silent. Nathaniel apologized, but Clara didn't immediately accept it. She told him that forgiveness wasn't something that could be demanded in front of a crowd. It had to be earned through changed behavior. Nathaniel nodded. For once, he didn't argue. Months later, things began to change. Nathaniel started showing up consistently for his children. He attended school events, remembered birthdays, and learned the small things that fathers are supposed to know. He didn't suddenly become perfect, but he began making an effort. Clara continued building her company and raising Caleb, Grace, and Hannah. She never needed Nathaniel's money to prove her worth. She never needed his regret to validate her pain. Her greatest victory was much simpler. She had built a peaceful life without becoming bitter. One afternoon, Clara watched her 3 children running through a park in Ohio. The sunlight fell gently across the grass, and for a moment she remembered the frightened young mother she had once been, sitting alone in a tiny apartment and wondering how she would survive. She smiled. She had survived. More than that, she had grown. Her story was never really about arriving at a wedding in a limousine. It was about arriving at a place in life where someone else's opinion could no longer determine her value. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who may need hope today, and subscribe for more emotional stories about courage, kindness, and second chances. Your support helps these stories reach people who might need their message. And before you leave, comment "Kindness always wins" if you believe that a person's past should never be used to decide their future. Because sometimes, the greatest comeback isn't making someone regret losing you. Sometimes it's becoming so strong, peaceful, and kind that you no longer need revenge at all. Clara didn't arrive at that wedding to prove Nathaniel wrong. She arrived as the woman she had fought so hard to become, and that was a victory no expensive wedding, no cruel invitation, and no judgment could ever take away.